Anybody home?
Oh, hello, Mr. Keller.
Oh, hi, Maggie.
Here, let me take your bag.
All right.
Things have been fairly quiet while you've been away. But I've managed to take care of a few odds and ends around the office.
What kind of a welcome is that? I expected to see banners waving. Welcome home, Steve Keller. Where are they? Okay, you didn't expect me back till tomorrow. I'll come back tomorrow.
No, okay, you win. Welcome home, Steve Keller.
That's more like it.
No, actually, it really is nice to have you back. I'm getting sick and tired of those odds and ends.
The president of the company know I'm back?
I told him you were coming in this morning, so he went ahead and scheduled a meeting at 5. The chairman's going to be there, plus 1 or 2 other board members, plus the whole bunch from senior management.
Oh, that's just great. That means I've got half a day to get up a report for the meeting. Well, you better sharpen pencils, Maggie. Oh, before you do, would you phone to have some lunch sent up, please?
Okay.
I've been away for almost a month. I got enough material here to write a book, 2 books, and they give me half a day to write it.
2 ham and Swiss cheese sandwiches, please. Mr. Keller's office, room 200.
Why'd you tell him I was coming back today?
Well, he asked me, so I told him.
Some secretary. You're fired. But not until we get that report.
You want butter on your sandwich?
No mayonnaise. Did you hear what I said?
Yes, I'm fired and you want mayonnaise. Now, how do you want to start this report? Memorandum?
Yes. Memorandum. From Steve Keller to corporate management and board of directors. Subject, civil defense and industry's role in... No. Cut that. I'll keep it simple. Yeah. Memorandum to industry. Subject, civil defense. All right, 1 month ago, I was instructed by the president of our company to prepare this report on industrial civil defense. That is, on industry's role in the National Civil Defense Program, with a special emphasis on our own industry. My job was to find out what's going on in other industries and to collect first-hand information to serve as the basis of my recommendations for our own company's civil defense program. Now, the key question I'll try to answer in this report is why so many companies are involved in civil defense in the first place. That is, what motives compel them to spend money and man-hours on industrial civil defense programs. In every case, the impetus for action has come from the top, from the men who are critically responsible to their stockholders for running the company, from the board of directors and corporate presidents. Protect your assets. That's an order. And your number 1 asset is your people. You got all that?
Why don't you go right into your field trip?
Okay, good. In West Point, Georgia, I discussed the subject of a company's responsibility for its employees, its human assets, with Joseph Lanier, chairman of West Point Pepperell. Lanier is keenly aware of the leadership role his company must assume in all aspects of community life, not simply the one that concerns us here.
Steve, we're in the textile business, you see. Use a lot of cotton.
Yeah, I see that.
Been at it a long time, since 1880. We've grown locally from a very small concern with less than 200 employees to about 7,000, out of a total employment situation of some 18,000. We are very proud of our employees. We try to provide good leadership on the job while we want good, strong management. We try to be helpful, and we cooperate in the very best of schools and churches, recreational life. And we think that the leadership that we try to give to our employees is appreciated.
How'd you go about setting up the whole civil defense program for your organization?
Well, with full support of our board of directors and with the enthusiastic cooperation of our managers, an organization within the company was formed, and Bob Uhl was appointed company coordinator.
I suppose then he's the man I should see to fill me in on details.
He'll be glad to show you around.
Steve, you look like you've got a job just about like I had it several years ago when West Point Manufacturing Company launched into their civil defense program. We had the Army engineers come in and make a survey of our buildings, and I suppose that they have probably made a similar survey of your facilities, have they not?
They've been by.
After several of their surveys, then we came to the conclusion that we have a potential of shelter space in our community for the entire population.
Bob, what do you have going on here?
Got a building addition going on right here now, Steve, and we have just air-conditioned this mill, and in doing so, we have bricked up the windows, and this has given us a great many additional spaces.
This, as you see, is a pretty large room, and it'll house about 2,000 people, and we've taken into account the fact that the looms are going to take up space.
What's that other smaller tank there, Bob?
Smaller tank is a tank that's in parallel with the big tank, and the two float together on the system and serve the mill requirements there.
Well, in an emergency, can this water be drunk?
Well, right now it's not processed for that purpose.
But you could use it.
We would use it, that's right. We would add a little chlorine to it to make it safe from any bacteriological standpoint, but it would not be a contaminated water in that it's protected by the cover on the top from any fallout or radiation.
Well, how many gallons do you have in these tanks?
It'd be about 500,000 gallons that would be available at any time.
Besides measuring the intensity of radiation, gentlemen, you need to know if you have people entering your shelter who are contaminated. Meaning, do they contain fallout on their clothing, their head, their shoes, or any part of
That's Shelton Draper, who is our county civil defense coordinator. He's certainly the fellow you want to see back in your place, because he can be a tremendous help to you. Right now he's conducting a shelter managers school. These fellows you see here will be the shelter managers in our shelters. They'll be the sole authority. These fellows, as you heard him say, will be able to say who can come into the shelter. If they're contaminated or not, they must be cleaned up. They'll say what kind of conduct a person must have to stay in the shelter. It's a very important position.
How many men have been trained for that job?
We've trained about 50 of these people who will be assigned to our various shelters. Now, helping Shelton up here is Frank Manderson, who is the state director of civil defense. And these gentlemen on his staff are aiding Shelton in the conducting of these various training sessions, which are very helpful. Later on, Shelton will take you down and show you our control center and some of the activities down in the mill.
Jim, I'd like you to meet Steve Keller.
How do you do, Jim?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Jim, Steve is sent here from another company. Set up his own civil defense program. He's looking over ours. Jim here is our civil defense communications officer.
This your regular job?
Oh, no, I'm chief electrician in the plant as a regular job.
You volunteer for this?
No, Sheldon drafted me.
How did he happen to choose you?
Well, I have some experience with radio work in the plant and outside, too.
You have other men who can operate this?
Oh, yeah, we have around 50 people that has been trained by Sheldon to operate this equipment in an emergency.
Well, it looks very good, the whole setup.
Thank you a lot.
Thanks for your time, Jim.
Thank you.
I'm very much impressed by what they've done at West Point. A company that employs almost half the working population in the community has to assume at least that much responsibility, if not more. They've done it here. In a short time, they will reach their goal of providing shelter for every man, woman, and child in 6 Chattahoochee Valley mill towns. They received a lot of help from the local civil defense office, setting up a training program, finding and stocking their shelters, and providing technical assistance when it was needed. In the view of West Point Manufacturing, the effort is more than worth it. Bob Ohl considers the entire operation a kind of insurance policy. Not the kind that pays off your survivors, but the sort of insurance that guarantees, as far as possible, that you will survive. You'll be your own beneficiary.
That's what I call insurance.
I hope I'm making myself clear. The point I've got to get across here is that in order to make a civil defense program work, we've got to take a look at our resources. Find the hidden talent among our own employees, like that radio man, and put them to work where they'll really be useful. All right, now let's get back to the total program. Now, take this. Shelters, and underline that. Okay. Ideally, the place to begin is from the ground up. Take IBM, for example. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I visited IBM's new corporate headquarters in Armonk, New York, about 40 miles north of the city. Ed O'Donnell spoke about the company's vast civil defense program. What were some of the considerations that prompted IBM to relocate from Manhattan up here in Armonk?
Oh, we thought of a number of things, Steve. The pleasant surroundings themselves and convenient commuting and just a more pleasant family life for everybody. These were some of the considerations.
Can you tell me what is general company policy on shelters?
Well, basically, we believe in shelters, in providing fallout shelters for the most employees in every reasonable way. We've cooperated with the government program on identifying existing space, licensing them, and stocking them with supplies. In this way, we've found over 30,000 shelter spaces. And then with what we've constructed ourselves in new buildings, we have well over 37,000, and very shortly we'll have over 45,000. Well, Steve, let me take you downstairs into the shelter area, and I'll show you how we button it up, and I think you'll find it interesting, and perhaps some things you can use in your planning. Steve, you might be interested in our program generally. We've always called it the Emergency Planning Program. We've always gone on the theory that we should plan for everyday emergencies. Tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, perhaps disasters, airplane crashes, almost anything like that. Then we build up to civil defense in our shelter program. So the point I'm making here is that we base it on the everyday planning for any kind of emergency. And then we gradually get to the point of shelter construction and all other aspects of civil defense.
IBM's Armonk shelter is one of the finest examples of good design and sensible planning. A series of concealed doors swing out to close off the shelter area. The doors themselves are either lead-lined where necessary or fire-resistant, blocking off a shelter area large enough to house all the employees in the building. But, most important, the enclosed area is all dual-purpose space, used on a day-to-day basis now for normal building services that would also be needed for the shelter, the kitchen, medical department, storerooms for food, emergency generator, communications. There is no wasted space. It's a design technique called slanting. The Office of Civil Defense helped the IBM architects work out the details. Let's see now, we're thinking about building a new plant in Denver, aren't we? I'll make a big note here, Maggie. Denver, new shelter, slanting.
Sounds like you spent the entire month looking at shelters.
Well, not exactly. Shelters are only part of the story. Take this, Maggie. After leaving IBM, the next stop was Iron Mountain, near Hudson, New York, a short drive from Albany. The president of Iron Mountain Storage Company is Doug Walker. The object here was to find out all I could about the storage of vital records, a part of civil defense that concerns every company.
Very beautiful, beautiful area. Well, they just finished the cherries, and now they're harvesting the pears. But I think your number one job is to learn all you possibly can about record storage. Is that right?
That's why I'm here, yeah.
Well, I think you've come to the right spot. We have today hundreds and hundreds of top American corporations storing their vital records underground here at Iron Mountain.
The site you've chosen actually was naturally adapted for your purposes, wasn't it?
Yes, yes. One of the outstanding thoughts about this cave here, and I want you to remember it, please, Steve, it's frightfully important. It's not a hole in the ground. A hole in the ground, everything runs in. Iron Mountain is actually a mountain, and you drive straight into it. So that when it rains and snows, and so when there's fallout blowing around, it sheds it. In the case of water and moisture, why, a hole in the ground, everything runs in. We do not have a humidity problem at Iron Mountain. We have a natural humidity of around, it could be 60%. We air condition the building and bring that down around 45 to 50, which is about right.
Doug, I understand that in addition to record storage, some companies have alternate headquarters here?
That is completely right, yes. Completely right. Boardroom, sleeping accommodation, kitchen facility, where they can stay for 30 days, Steve.
You mean the works?
The works, yeah.
Its sheer size is absolutely staggering. Endless corridors running along the route of the original excavations. New corridors, chiseled or blasted out of the solid rock, interrupted by one steel door after another. Each protecting a vault of critical records, of a drug company, a bank, a university, a manufacturer, an investment company, a life insurance company, or even the private belongings of an eccentric collector. It all adds up to almost 600,000 square feet of floor space, the equivalent of a 30-story building. Iron Mountain is only one of many record storage companies located throughout the country. Record storage makes a lot of sense. After all, corporate records represent the corporate memory. Let's think for a moment what would happen if our company lost its records. But a record storage center must have more than storage space. It must also have the means of processing vital records for storage, and a way of retrieving those records, whether they are magnetic tapes, microfilms, aperture cards, or hard copy documents. These are working records a company may need at a moment's notice. Records stored by private companies are frequently pulled out of the vault and sent back to the home office to meet some minor emergency.
How many people can you sleep here?
We can sleep 66. Actually, it's broken down this way. Your dormitories accommodate 22 people, male and female. But then on a 24-hour day, this program is set up in 3 8-hour shifts. So you multiply 3 by 22 and you have 66 people. Now you have exactly the same programming in your kitchen. Let me show you around the rest of it. You haven't seen anything yet.
The Shell Oil Company actually has a complete office set up in Iron Mountain that can be activated in a matter of hours. Alternate headquarters for a complex company. Mr. Chet French of Standard Oil of New Jersey and Egg Robb of Shell Oil gave me some background on the hows and whys.
You know, these are very comfortable quarters here. I don't get any feeling of being confined, or the fact that we're in the middle of a mountain, you know, with all this ore above us somehow.
We have a marvelous view of the Hudson River. How about that?
You pull that on all your guests here?
Well, that's one of Shell Company's standard jokes in our little facility here. No, we're glad that you do not feel that you're confined. We tried to make it a livable quarters because actually people are going to live here and maybe under strained conditions. So we hope it'll be homey and they can feel relaxed, and this is what we tried to do.
Now, how is it that your company happened to build at this specific location?
Shell companies have had our vital records stored in this area, in this mine actually, since 1953. And this made it logical for us to put our alternate headquarters for the corporation, our head office, at the same place.
In other words, you don't just use this as an emergency facility, as we've talked about.
No, we would plan to use it for some meetings of training our people about our emergency planning program. We might have some executive meetings up here. Well, we might even have some technical meetings up here. We'll make use of it by one hook or another.
This problem of record storage is something we haven't thought about too seriously. I wouldn't be surprised if we kept them in the basement of this building.
I think we store our records in a warehouse on the other side of town.
That's not much better. All right, take this. We must get our vital records out of the city and set up the files so they can be utilized in a hurry if we have to. And we must start thinking about creating an emergency headquarters that we can use as an alternate operating center.
If we have to.
Exactly, if we have to. Okay, take this also. Western Electric, for example, uses the basement of its training center in New Jersey as their alternate corporate headquarters. According to Al Molasfini, Western Electric is deeply committed to industrial defense in all its aspects.
At present, we have shelter space for roughly 2/3 of our employees. We are continuously looking for additional shelter space.
See, we're below ground now, aren't we?
Yes, we are 4.5 feet below the ground level. With the building on top, this affords a protection factor of in excess of 1,000.
That's terrific, isn't it?
It has to be because this is our emergency corporate headquarters and damage assessment center.
Oh, I see. In other words, this is the brain center for the whole corporation in event of any disaster.
That's true, because the New York headquarters became inaccessible, then the executives would report to this area. We can provide facilities for 100 people for a period of a 2-week stay. We have a 1,500-gallon water tank in which we change the water every 2 months for freshness. Here in our supply room, we have all the things required for the 2-week stay. Radiological monitoring instruments, I'm sure you have seen many of these. Food, blankets, even manuals. We have written manuals, emergency corporate headquarters instructions, firefighting, radiological monitoring. We have also gone so far as to write up a management succession list.
Where are those names kept?
This list is kept in our record storage center under very close security.
Western Electric, Emergency Headquarters. Thank you, Los Angeles. One moment, please.
Western Electric has 53 major plant locations throughout the United States. This is excellent defensively because of plant dispersal. However, it creates a major communications problem. The damage assessment room receives information pertaining to physical plant damage and injury to personnel. The people sitting at the desk in front of us receive this information, pass it on to the plotter at the map, and he places this information on the map. The executive officers then have this information available to them so that they can start thinking in terms of normal business operations after the attack period is over.
Are you tied in with the local civil defense units around here?
Yes, we have a red phone in the communications room.
What do you do if the phones are knocked out?
We have backup radios.
K2BDA, K2BDA, this is WB2HPD calling. K2BDA, K2BDA, this is an emergency. WB2, Hotel Papa Delta, calling and over.
Sounds like Western Electric has thought of just about everything.
Well, after all, they are in the telephone business. On the other hand, we don't have anything that elaborate in this company. It's getting late.
Oh, we have plenty of time, don't worry.
All right. We've got to expand and improve our present communication setup. And we must train people to use it. In almost every industry, you need special training for special problems. Take the steel business, for example.
This is Jones & Laughlin Steel Corporation's largest steel mill. We extend for 5 miles along the western bank of the Ohio River here, and it this particular plant, we employ about 14,000 people. I think it's interesting, too, Steve, to know that we had safety long before we had an industrial defense program. We had plant protection and we had firefighting. So the industrial defense program is simply coordinating the efforts of these service agencies into one common cause, and that is to fight a disaster. Each one knows exactly what his function is to be, and if there is a disaster, they are working together for one purpose, and that is to save life and property. We have shelters throughout this entire plant for most of our employees. These shelters have been stocked with the federal supplies under the federal marking and stocking program, and we can keep these people in the shelter areas for approximately 2 weeks. We have the food, the water, first aid supplies, radiological instruments, and the employees know exactly where they are to go in the event an alert is sounded.
Shutting down a steel mill in a crisis is not simply a matter of throwing a switch. The violent heat would cause explosive damage. The plant and machinery would be crippled without a precisely engineered and effectively managed shutdown procedure. We face almost exactly the same situation as some of our own plants, so you can appreciate the gravity of J&L's problem. In some phases of steelmaking, the shutdown operation takes several days. In others, it can be a matter of minutes. So, depending on the warning time, each worker knows exactly what he can do and what he should do to protect life and property from the inevitable damage of a sudden work stoppage. According to a plan that's been devised with the same precision and care they use to gauge the accuracy of their heats and the thickness of their steel. In Dick Whalen's view, whether or not this shutdown plan will work is principally a matter of training, practice, and drill.
Flapdeck and red deck. Thank you. Sergeant, the Industrial Defense Coordinator wants to conduct a red alert test. Now.
Let's go, George. You call the operator, I'll call the works manager.
Operator, this is red deck and flapdeck. Now the process of conducting a red.
Mr. Keller, Sergeant Parisi. We just received word on a red alert test. We have your permission to shut the plant down. Okay, thank you. Hit the button, George. Here, I'll call
The red alert test is basically a check of communications that would alert all parts of the company. Start sirens, direct the employees to shelter, shut down the plants, and 1,000 other things in their emergency plans. J&L is constantly updating its communication system. Training here also includes the kind of medical and first aid courses that we have given our employees. Approximately 90% of J&L's employees have completed the 5 courses given by the Red Cross, and many are now enrolled in medical self-help training. During a national emergency, these same skills would become part of the civil defense operation. J&L has its own ambulances and special equipment, and at their larger plants, their own hospitals, along with a staff of doctors and nurses 24 hours a day. But the emergency plan doesn't stop here. It extends beyond Jones and Laughlin itself to include other companies in the area that have pooled their equipment and people, their supplies, ambulances, heavy equipment, and trained staff to assist each other and the communities around them in a major disaster. It's called mutual aid. Skinny Harris explained it this way.
The city of Pittsburgh is surrounded with a network of waterways such as the Allegheny River meeting the Monongahela River right at the Gateway Center. And as you probably know, the heavy industry is situated along the river banks.
What would happen if your bridges were knocked out and, say, roads blocked up?
If the roads and bridges are out of use for some reason or other, then naturally we have to look to the waterways to supply those who need the equipment and materials by the way of boats and barges, and moving them back and forth and up and down the river. This is an informal agreement, and at the present time we have some 20 members to the association, namely Babcock's and Wilcox, McIntosh and Hemphill, St. Joe Lead and Westinghouse, and many others.
I recommend that our company follow the example set by Jones and Lachlan and a lot of other companies throughout the country and organize a mutual aid association with companies around us. For the practical truth is that we would never have enough equipment to handle a full-blown disaster.
Well, that just about does it. Oh, I want to add one more paragraph to wrap it up. I have all the books and pamphlets I need to fill in all the details. I just want to say this. The first thing we must do is appoint a company civil defense coordinator and give him your full support. He should attend the Office of Civil Defense Industrial Management course and then start working on a company civil defense plan, a disaster Bible, which will cover the complete spectrum of company emergency operations, as I've outlined in this report, right down to the last detail. Okay, that does it. You better start typing it up, Maggie. Oh, and listen, I want you with me at the meeting tonight with all my notes. I'll buy you supper.